The No Man's Sky Synthesis update brought with it the ability to upgrade your ships, but buying slots gets super expensive, and that's where the Stasis Device farm comes into play. Stasis devices along with fusion igniters are the highest value crafted goods in the game. They have a base price of 15.6 million units, and provided you go about it efficiently, can be the biggest money maker, allowing you to comfortably make billions an hour. Today I'll go through everything you need to know to do this. This guide follows the format of a mega guide and so is made up of multiple sections. These sections are timestamped to make it easier to navigate and ingest information, allowing you to watch just parts at a time and revisit sections to refresh your memory. Linked timestamps can be found in the description as well as on the website in the written guide, which has further helpful tables and tools. A link to that is in the pinned comment. We'll start by covering how to craft stasis devices. Stasis devices are what I refer to as a tier 5 item. The tiers are defined by what materials are required to craft them, and whether they are materials that need to be crafted themselves and so require multiple levels of crafting to get to. In short, a tier 4 item is an item that requires at least one tier 3 item to craft. A tier 6 is one that requires at least one tier 5, and a tier 1 is an item that only requires base resources to craft, and so on. Here is a graphic that shows the crafting levels of a stasis device. This graphic, along with all other graphic tables and other useful things shown throughout this guide, can be found in the written version linked in the pinned comment. The base resources required to craft a single stasis device are 100 cactus flesh, 50 Fecium, 300 frost crystal, 400 gamma root, 200 selenium, 200 starball, 500 nitrogen, 500 sulfurine, 500 radon, 50 darksite paraffinium and phosphorus, 300 condensed carbon, and 150 ionized cobalt. All of these resources are either farmable or can be infinitely refined, though we will avoid refining where possible due to how long it takes and how unsafe it can be to leave items alone inside a refiner. The option is there for those who prefer it. The first 6 are all harvested from crops that can be grown in biodomes, hydroponics trays, and all but Fecium can be planted in the ground of their respective biome types. Though due to the addition of Harvest All button to biodomes, we will be focusing on those. The 3 gases can be extracted from the atmosphere on planets, most efficiently via the use of hotspots, and the 3 biome specific resources can be extracted from the ground, also best done via the use of hotspots. The condensed carbon and ionized cobalt cannot be extracted using automatic industrial methods without refining afterwards, and while refining is very slow, I believe it is the best choice, so we'll be setting up a small but efficient part of the whole deal for this. To craft all of these base resources into the various things that lead to stasis devices, you will need blueprints. The blueprints you are going to want to have for both crafting up to stasis devices and building the farm are many, and there are 2 to 3 outlets you'll want to do to obtain them. Firstly, we have the base missions, which has the primary mission of expanding your base, though there are separate mission lines that branch off from it for each of the NPC terminals you will amass. On top of this, you have the base terminal itself, which will spit out blueprints on occasion, though they are time locked. The base missions are a solid time investment and are not the only way to get these blueprints. You can also get all of these base building blueprints from the Nexus with the currency of salvage data. Salvage data is found buried beneath the surface of the planet. You use the analysis visor to look around and spot this symbol. That denotes a buried salvage data capsule. Head over and use your terrain manipulator to unearth, then interact with it to gain around 2 to 4 of them. Here is a big old list of the minimum building blueprints you will want for making these farms. The Galactic Trade Terminal landing pad along with a few others aren't fully essential, but make life one hell of a lot easier for you in the building and any visitors you may get on completion. To get all of these blueprints, you'll need to farm 147 salvage data. You actually only need 104 for the specific blueprints you need for building, but with how the blueprint trees work, you'll have to buy some other items to get access to the ones you need, and these come to 43 on their own. 147 salvage technology isn't as bad as it sounds. On my permanent save, I collected around 180 in 55 or so minutes on a predator-ridden lush, without particularly well upgraded movement tech. The biggest tip I could give to speeding this up is to not only build up your movement tech for the exosuit, as you'll want it for later, but also mix getting these salvage data with looking for the hotspots for the farm later, as you'll be looking for quite a few anyway. Lastly, for the blueprints are the ones needed to craft the items themselves. Some of these, like the ones required to make circuit boards and living glass, can be gotten through the base missions, but all can be gotten through manufacturing facilities. Manufacturing facilities are randomly spawned buildings on planets. Remember that not all planets have buildings. To be safe in general and not waste time, just stick to the standard 6 biome types of lush, hot, cold, dusty, radioactive and toxic. These all have their respective biome specific crops on them when scanning from space, so it's nice and easy to tell. When searching for manufacturing facilities, there are a few methods, but one is easier than the others. You can use your signal booster to randomly scan nearby targets to obtain waypoints. You can fly around randomly scanning as you go, or you can purchase planetary charts for secure locations from a cartographer in a space station using navigation data. The best way to obtain navigation data is to invest in a whole bunch of red barrels. Red barrels are super cheap to build, requiring only an antimatter and some ionized cobalt, and once charged you can interact with them to gain some goodies. What they drop is somewhat random. They drop what they drop based on where they are placed, so one barrel will always drop the same thing. This can be gained to have a room with many barrels all over the place, put in specific spots to drop exactly what you are after, though working this all out can be troublesome as they require time to charge after being placed. My personal use of them is to have them on my freighter. This doesn't mean that what they output can't be gained, but the antimatter, casings, condensed carbon and navigation data they drop are quite useful. The barrel fabricator blueprint can be gained from the construction research terminal on the Nexus, where you get the base building blueprints. It does require you to also purchase a wall screen, drawers and small crate first to be able to access, but all in all this will only cost you a further 4 salvage data. Once you have obtained a nice big stack of secure facility planetary charts, head down to a planet with buildings on it, and while you're in your ship, which isn't required, just convenient, use the planetary chart in your inventory and it will scan for a nearby outpost. The security facility planetary chart will do one of 4 things. It will find and add either a waypoint from a manufacturing facility, an operation centre or a depot, or it will find nothing. If you find nothing, then just keep going for a few more tries before finding another planet, as the scanning feature is a tad janky. I would advise not visiting depots and operation centres until you are done with the planet, as having the waypoints of those already there will narrow the scan down, costing fewer charts in the long run, or at least that's how we expect it works. If your charts start sending you to the same facilities you have been to already, then do an atmosphere jump to at least a quarter of the planet for fresh ground. It is best to not stick to one planet for too long, for time's sake, and change regularly. You may also find success by flying north from the manufacturing facility you have just been to and following marks on the ground. These marks are things like other buildings and patches of the biome crops, as these are all laid out on the planet's surface in lines, and each line generally has similar types of buildings on them, meaning you are more likely to find more manufacturing facilities by following these lines and scanning regularly, though it is not at all guaranteed. Also be sure to scan for your next facility while still at your previous. This is because the action of scanning has a minimum distance from your location. This is to prevent the scan from sending you right to the nearest one, which at that time is the one you are already at. So scan while you are already there to prevent it from sending you right back. Once you've gotten to the manufacturing facility, you will have to shoot the door in. It is quickest and safest to do this with your ship weapons, though a moderately upgraded multi-tool weapon module will make short work of it. Note that the mining beam will not affect the door. Once you hit the door and damage it, sentinels will be alerted to your disturbance, so run right inside the building when you get the chance, as they will not attack or even detect you while you are inside. Head to the console and read the text for a riddle that you must complete. This will be far easier if you either know all the words of the race's language that runs the system, and or you have the translator module for the exosuit, obtainable for nanites from the exosuit researcher in the Nexus. On that subject, upon testing after beyond launched, there was nothing to gain by having more than just the S-Class version installed. They do not appear to stack the buff. If you answer the riddle/puzzle correctly, you will be rewarded with a factory override. In my experience, this has always given 2 of them per time, but it is not clear if and what would cause a different number, though we know one is also possible. It will also bring up some options. Pick the one for blueprints to gain access to the crafting blueprints trees. Everything in here costs a single override, and you can spend however many you have all at once or none if you so choose. You'll need a total of 22 override modules, which, if you are super lucky, is 11 to 15 manufacturing facilities successfully answered, and 15 override modules if you have previously done the base missions enough to get all of the blueprints to make living glass and circuit boards. Not all puzzles at these facilities will present you with an opportunity to enter the menu, so just stick with it. A cheat sheet for all the puzzles may be coming to the website sometime soon. When it is up, I'll put a link to it in the written guide on the website, linked below. We finally come to the farm itself. This farm will produce 64 stasis devices per harvest. It is fairly simple and can be done on console with no worry to complexity due to some sneaky yet fully legit methods for complexity control and just plain efficiency. 64 stasis devices can be sold for 1,018 million and some change, at just a 2% increase of the base price by demand, which is not at all hard to find. I found a 2.7% increase checking just 25 or so systems in my list, which would give a further 7.1 million. This farm can be built multiple times without too much effort once you know what you're doing. As well as this, the UAS, also known as the Union of Allied Systems, which is the Xaine's world known as Civilisation, has a system called the Golden Royal Mint, where Golden Gek, Sword, Christie's Beach, Warcrown, Letters, myself, and several others have been building these farms, allowing people to harvest each one surprisingly quickly and cap their units potentially in less than an hour. More on that a bit later. This farming setup has some minimum requirements as far as location goes, so next we'll look at the types of system you'll want to find to do this. While the system requirements for a stasis device farm are quite low and very easy to find, the UAS already has 2 for people to build and farm together in and share in each other's work, available on all platforms and difficulties but restricted to Euclid and soon Isentum, so if you are interested in that you can skip this section and we'll cover the location a bit later in the guide. Otherwise, if you wish to find your own or establish one in your or another civilization, then you are going to want to look for a system with 3 specific planet types. These are a cold planet, hot planet and a lush planet. Planets with these biome types can be recognised by the existence of their respective crops when scanning the planet from space. Cold planets will indicate they have frost crystal available, hot will show selenium and lush will show starbulb. You will also need to ensure that one of these planets has cobalt available also. You can have a separate planet out of these 3 with cobalt on it, but for maximum efficiency you'll want the cobalt producing planet to be one that also has oxygen, which will be available on all of the 6 primary biome types for crops of hot, cold, lush, dusty, toxic and radioactive, and a few others. I'd recommend that in general when looking for this system you check systems with a yellow star as visible from the galactic map that has 5 or 6 planets or moons, one which is hot, one cold, one lush, as well as one of the planets having cobalt. The extra planet will be useful for many and required for large farms on a console to spread out and reduce potential lag and bug issues. What we want from these planets is radon and dark side from the cold, sulfurine and phosphorus from the hot, nitrogen and paraffinium from the lush, and then oxygen and cobalt from one of them. All crops will be planted in biodomes, so the planet the crops are planted on does not matter. Once you have found your system, you are going to need to find some hotspots to provide both power and resources for your farms. In this section, we'll go over what hotspots are and exactly how they work, which is essential for planning your farm and properly utilising the spots. Hotspots are locations spread all over planets that are dense in some kind of resource. There are 3 different types and then some subtypes. First, we have electromagnetic. These are your power spots and are the way to fulfill your power needs in almost every possible circumstance. Other methods of gaining power include solar panels and biofuel reactors, both of which supply 50 kps per module, though the solar panel only supplies power during the day and can fluctuate at times, like when placed at the poles. To utilise them in a constant setup you need batteries and lots of them. Biofuel reactors require constant fuel to run. I would suggest even for a new save just skipping right to electromagnetic generators that utilise hotspots. It is almost guaranteed that there will be an electromagnetic hotspot within 1000 U of the base computer that you can get to. I'll be covering how the base extension technique works in the next section. Then there are mineral or deep vein hotspots. These provide a location to place mineral extractors to gain huge amounts of a particular resource indefinitely. There are 21 different types of mineral hotspot, though each planet will only have 3 usually. This will always be a chromatic hotspot, so copper, cadmium, emerald, indium, or the 4 activated versions of these. The second will be a biome resource, but only if it is one of the 6 primary biomes, so these are paraffinium, darksite, phosphorus, pyrite, uranium and ammonia. If it is not one of the big 6, then the second will be one of the tertiary minerals, of which the third will be also. These are cobalt, gold, magnetized ferrite, salt, silver and sodium. This enables things like single base nanite farms to be made of non-Big 6 worlds that have both silver and gold as well as other combinations. Note that rusted metal appears to be specific to worlds without an atmosphere, though more research needs to be done on this, though it's cool to think that they may have thought with the logic that a planet with an atmosphere would magnetize the ferrite. Then there are the 4 gases, which each planet will either have 0 or 2 of. If it is one of the big 6, then you'll find both oxygen as well as one of the 3 primary gases. Cold and radioactive will have radon, lush and toxic will have nitrogen, and hot and dusty will have sulfurine. To find these hotspots, you are going to need the survey device. This is a Multitool technology. The blueprint for this can be purchased from the Multitool researcher in the Nexus for nanites. Once built in your active Multitool, you'll be able to activate your analysis visor and switch between what is now 4 different modes. There is the standard analysis visor, used for searching out local resources and points of interest, as well as scanning flora, fauna and minerals. Then there are the 3 surveying modes. The first searches for electromagnetic hotspots, the second for minerals, and the third for gases. These modes will show you where the closest hotspot is for that type. If you are within 400 U of a hotspot of the type you are looking for, you can see what class it is, as well as how far from you it is. To find the direction of the hotspot, just look around and check the pulses in the centre of the HUD. They will indicate whether you should turn left, right or continue straight. The speed of the pulse is also an indicator of how close you are to it. If this hotspot you are searching for is electromagnetic, then rest assured in that it is a power hotspot. But if it is gas or mineral, it could be any of the types available on that planet. And the only way to find out which is to head to the centre of the hotspot, at which point it will automatically analyse it and give you the information. Do note that where you analyse the hotspot is where the hotspot waypoint will show up. This waypoint is only visible in survey device screens unless tagged and will disappear upon reload. This is not the centre of the hotspot, this is simply where you scanned the hotspot, which is within 5 to 10 U of the centre of it. So if you are looking for the exact centre, just move around that waypoint a bit until you see the density of the waypoint cap. If you are not within 400 U of the nearest of that hotspot type, it will usually still give you enough information to find it. You won't see the pulse, but you can still faintly hear it. And it will be directional audio, meaning if you need to turn right, then the pulse will only sound in your right ear. If left, then left ear, Reading the straight ahead can be tricky, but from this far off, just boosting in the rough direction will get you within the 400U pretty easily. Hotspots work on a class system. There are the typical 4 you find in No Man's Sky: C, B, A and S. The class will determine the output of the hotspot, whether that is resources or power generation per interface used. The electromagnetic hotspots, C class means a maximum of 150 kps per electromagnetic generator, B class is 220, A is 250 and S is 300. These are shown in the hotspot scanning screen as a percentage, which for C to S is 50%, 73%, 83% and 100%. When it comes to mineral and gas hotspots, the numbers are a little different. C-class gas and mineral hotspots offer a maximum per extractor of 250 or 40%. B-class have a maximum of 375, which is 60%. A are 500 or 80%, and S-class have a maximum of 625, which is of course 100%. As for generation and how likely you are to find specific classes of each hotspot, I have some numbers for you from the game files. In the files, electromagnetic has its weighting, then all 3 minerals have identical weightings to each other but different to electromagnetic, and then both gases have separate yet identical to each other weightings too. These weightings can be taken in 2 ways. Either the generation system decides which of the 6 options will be present in the hotspot generation location, then decides a class, which is the most likely, or all weightings are taken into consideration at once and both the type and class are decided in one calculation. Each type has its probability weighting, which makes the first method the most likely while already being the most logical. If we take this into account on an example world that is in a red star system, so the first mineral is cadmium, that is lush, so its second mineral is paraffinium. The third mineral is, as far as we know, random within the possibilities, so let's go with cobalt. As it is lush, its first gas is nitrogen, and as it is a planet with an atmosphere, its second gas is oxygen. Counting electromagnetic hotspots too, as all worlds have them, you have a 1 in 6 chance of finding a hotspot for any of those 6 hotspot types. It is not, as you may assume I did, a 1 in 3 chance of finding a power, mineral or gas hotspot. 50% of the time you'll find one of the 3 minerals. 33% of the time you'll find one of the 2 gases, and only 17% of the time you'll find a power hotspot. At this point I should note that it is certainly possible that another modifier elsewhere is influencing this, but from the information we have, this is by far the most logical. As for the individual class weightings, any magnetic hotspot you come across will have a 53% chance of being C class, 31.5% of being B class, 10.5% chance of being an A class, and only a 5% chance of being S class. Any mineral hotspot you find has a 46% chance of being C class, 31% chance of being B class, 15% chance of being A class, and a much better than electro 8% chance of being an S class. Gas hotspots have the worst luck of the lot, with a 74% chance of being C class, 15% chance of being B, 7% chance of being A class, and a tiny 4% chance of being S class. This makes passive factories such as the activated indium a little more balanced for the time invested to other more involved farms and factories, as for those an S class does make a huge difference. But for farms such as the Stasis Device farm that we are focusing on in this guide, the class doesn't play that much of a part in it. Almost every hotspot in my test build is C class. This is primarily due to the long 16-hour charge time of the farm dictated by Echinocactus and its growth time. Lastly, for hotspots are how they work as far as the maximum density and how to be most efficient with their output. To extract minerals, power or gases from a hotspot, you must place down an interface. For power, this is an electromagnetic generator. For minerals, it is a mineral extractor, and for gases, the gas extractor. These interfaces will only output anything if they are placed in its respective hotspot type, and within that hotspot it will output a different amount depending on where it is placed. Think of a hotspot as a cylinder going up into space. The horizontal 2D centre of that cylinder is a big old long core, and that core gives the maximum output of the hotspot can produce, the maximum being defined by its class. Between the core and the outer edge, which is roughly 180 to 200 U from the centre depending on the class, the density and so potential output of the hotspot will degrade from its maximum to 0%. A gas extractor in the centre of an S-class oxygen hotspot will produce 625 oxygen per hour, but if you place it around the 200 U from the centre mark, it will produce nothing per hour. 100 U from the centre mark will be around 312 oxygen per hour. Because of this, it is most efficient to place your interfaces in the exact centre of the hotspot. Remember that where you analyse the hotspot and so where the marker is not the centre, it is just very close to the centre. So walk around the centre with the scanner active and monitor the density of the spot you are standing in to gauge where the actual centre is. This may lead you to think that you should bunch them as close to the centre as possible, but as the hotspot zone is shaped like a cylinder, it is far more efficient than anything else to arrange them into a single width and depth tower, going as high as you need for however many interfaces you require. The maximum height you can go with this is 1000 U, which is a frankly insane quantity of interfaces, so I wouldn't worry about not having enough height to do this. Note that to go higher than 300 U, you will have to have your base boundary unlocked, which I'll be covering in the next section. Thanks to a patch a few months ago, mineral and gas extractors as well as supply depots could not only be placed on flooring, but just about anything else too, so you can just stack them natively without the need for glitching. Electromagnetic generators have been possible to stack since inception, so tower away with your hotspot interfaces as close to the horizontal 2D centre as possible for best results. Base extension refers to a technique for increasing the buildable area of a player base. By default, your buildable area is a 300 U radius from the base computer. I believe the buildable area is shaped like a dome, as the 300 U limit is consistent for height also. Think of this as a sort of soft limit. There is a way that requires little effort to increase this buildable area to a maximum of 1000 U radius from the base computer, and this does still include height. To do this, you must unlock the boundary limiter. It may already be unlocked for you now, but just to be sure you can do this by simply saving and reloading. Your boundary is locked by performing such actions as teleporting, warping and using a portal. There may be more that trigger the boundary lock, but either way before you start extending, it is good practice to just save and reload. Once your boundary is unlocked, anything you place outside of the boundary while standing inside the boundary will have its own boundary. This item's boundary is around 25 to 30 U radius from it. It can be almost any item. I personally always just use wooden or concrete walls as they are cheap, quick and easy to spot after for removal. These base parts and their boundaries will all count as part of that base's buildable area, meaning that if you are inside it when building, anything you place belongs to that base and so will work and snap with it as well as be uploaded. I say about you being inside it when building because the build camera function, which is just fantastic, works on your player position for judging this, and not the camera position, meaning that even if you extend to the full 1000 U, you can still build a bit further. By placing your character on the edge, then entering the build camera, you can then move a little further out, and then even build a bit further than that, and still have it count as that one base. Though be warned, the load distance for base parts and such is 2000 U, which is around 8 minutes on foot, so if you are at the absolute edge of the boundary and have something the opposite side past the edge, it will not be loaded, which can be troublesome in some circumstances. In short, to extend your base boundary and build up to 1000 U away from your base computer, just go to the 295 to 300 U mark, open the build menu and start placing buildable parts in front of you as you head toward where you wish to extend to. This will form a tunnel boundary. Also note that when the boundary is locked again from teleporting or some other similar function, the base boundary will auto-revert to 300 U no matter what else is built. This is fine for what is already built. It will function normally, but will need to be unlocked to continue building out. On top of that, when it is unlocked again, it won't restore the former boundary you had made. It will fully reassess the boundary, so if you had deleted the parts used to make the tunnel, that tunnel will no longer exist. Only parts that belong to the base and still exist will have their boundary restored. You may also notice that with a locked boundary you can still build items outside of the base boundary while close to existing outer parts. I would suggest unlocking before doing so, as these parts will not count as part of that base. You can tell this is happening by the parts not snapping like they usually would. Walls won't snap to floors, etc. Bases are far more limited for uploading than they are for you. You can have as many bases as you want on a single planet, but you can only upload one of them. Any others on the same planet that you upload will override the former. This also counts for bases you have on that same planet on different saves. It is not one per planet per save, but one per planet per player. To upload a second base on the same planet and have them be visible by other players, you must upload the second on a different account. This works for different PSNs as well as different Steam accounts. This is the primary reason that the UAS will have two Stasis Device systems so that one player can upload over multiple difficulties. On top of this, there are protections regarding portals. You may build a portal base and have it fully encapsulate the portal, but this will not be visible by the players no matter how many times you upload it, to a degree. It is possible to encapsulate a portal in a base via a method I will not discuss, but it is not that troublesome, as while the base will be visible upon exiting the portal, if you unload the base and load the area again, safety measures will kick in and not load the part directly around the portal itself, crippling the base. It is thought that the proximity limit to a portal for a stable base upload is 525U, meaning your base computer must be further than this away from the portal to guarantee its stable and consistent visibility to other players. The UAS First Capital Tower, New Cardiff on Londinium, is a sketchy upload if there ever was one. It is a fair bit closer than the known limit to the portal and has been uploaded many times, and to this day it is reported to be visible to about half the people who visit. Other bases that have been used to test these boundaries have had the base computer far enough away but then extended to the portal to display light or wire messages to visitors. In these cases the wire and light are quite visible, but the walls and larger physical items appear to be filtered out to prevent griefing. It is important to be aware of this and free yourself from the hassle by generally not building near portals for bases you intend to upload. This isn't Atlas Rises, we now have our ships with us when we portal travel. The other side of the planet is no longer an inconvenience. Lastly, for limitations, is the base part quantity upload limit. Thank you to Darkwood Zelric for this and many other things, but it appears to be 3000 items per base. Anything after 3000 will either not upload or upload incomplete. In case you are concerned about this limit, 3000 items are more than big enough to blue screen a PS4. It's an insane farm size, so don't worry about it, just be aware of its existence. For this Stasis Device farm you are going to need quite a few hotspots, but don't worry, it's not as bad as it sounds, as this farm can be done easily with nothing but C-class hotspots, and not much bigger at all, like 10 to 20 total extra parts compared to S-class. The hotspot types you require are nitrogen, radon, sulfurine, paraffinium, phosphorus, darksite, cobalt, oxygen, and then an electromagnetic for each base. The minimum amount of bases is 3. This is due to the 3 gases, not counting oxygen, and the 3 biominerals being specific to 3 different planet types. For console, I would recommend spreading this setup over 5 to 6 planets for stability. You could potentially double the size if over 6 planets and be fine. The first 3 planets should be the gas and biomineral planets. This is for consideration to inventory space, not such a big deal on normal mode, but very important on survival and permadeath. The first of these bases needs to be on the planet with cobalt. The reasoning for this is so that you can sort out your condensed carbon and ionized cobalt right away, and have it available to craft the alloys from the biomaterials which require ionized cobalt with paraffinium, phosphorus or darksite, and the primary gas crafted goods which are nitrogen salt, enriched carbon and thermic condensate. All 3 of these require condensed carbon and one of the 3 gases, nitrogen, radon and sulfurine. For a 64 Stasis Device farm you will need 32,000 of each of the 3 gases, 3,200 of each of the 3 biominerals, 19,200 condensed carbon and 9,600 ionized cobalt. The only other materials we need come from crops. These will all be produced, or at least mostly produced, from hotspots. back to the first of the three. This needs to be the one with Cobalt on, and so also oxygen, so that you can refine everything there. For ease, let's say it's a lush planet like the UAS Stasis system. You'll need to find nitrogen, the paraffinium, cobalt, oxygen and electromagnetic, all for that one base. This is by far the most annoying one, but still not too bad. I would highly recommend that you head out in search of these with 5 beacons. 5 beacons are the maximum you can have active on one planet. You also have your analysis visor marker, which is more temporary but still very useful here. Head out and search for your hotspots, all 5 of them at the same time. Remember that even if it doesn't say one is in range, if you listen carefully you can judge the direction still from the pulse. When you find one you need, regardless of class, mark it with a beacon and colour code it so that you know which resource it is just by seeing the waypoint. I would say prioritise minerals over the other 2 first, just because the only one you don't need is one of the minerals, and finding 3 copper in a row when everything else is set up is infuriating. You need to find a network of these hotspots that can all be reached from a central point that is no further than 1000 U from them. Another way of looking at this is that they all need to fit into a circle that has a diameter of 2000 U, which is 8 minutes on foot. The easiest way to achieve this is to mark your first one, then circle it at a distance of around 600 U, checking for each hotspot. Mark whichever ones that are relevant, then head out to 1100 U from the first and circle it at that distance. If you still haven't found them all, circle it at 1700 U, scanning as you go, making sure that you take into account other spots you have now marked, as if the only oxygen spot that you find is 500 U behind the first, that is now 1700 U from the last spot you needed, that isn't going to work. You can't cover an area of 2200 wide. Don't be afraid to move and start searching again. I was too focused on a specific area when doing this one and spent 3 hours finding all of the hotspots when I could have done it in half the time. Once you have all of these spots marked and are ready to go, head to the centre of them and find a place you want to build your base that is within 1000 U of every single hotspot. Then whack it down and claim your spot, knowing that you'll be able to reach them all and trail lines back. When you or a visitor harvests this base, they will never leave the platform where this base computer is. They won't have to visit these spots. We'll build it so they can access everything in the centre. I have many tools and such planned for this guide, some which I'll be making after its release, so be sure to check the pinned comment and written guide for any tools and calculators that may help you plan this all. Industrial factories use very few but powerful base parts as far as hotspots go. We won't be looking at fauna related industrial in this guide. These are the gas extractor, mineral extractor, supply depot and the supply pipe. Gas extractors are used to interface with gas hotspots and mineral with mineral hotspots. Both extractor types will produce a differing amount of resources based on where they are placed, as we covered in the hotspot mechanics section. Both extractor types require power to produce goods, though their inventory does not require power to hold items or have their items be accessible by you. Extractors have a storage capacity of 250 and supply depots 1000. Without being connected, these inventories are completely separate. Yet if you connect them with supply pipes, while the inventory levels are still held in-game as separate, when you access any one in the connected network, you will see and be able to take out the entire network's resources in one go. This enables some pretty cool things like being able to pull all the resources from a hotspot that is 2000 U away via the use of pylons or even just a big old long pipe. Supply pipe does have its own limitations though. This is that they can only be stretched to a maximum of 200 U. So when you are stretching this over a longer distance, just make a connection. This connection doesn't need to be anything else. You could simply connect it to the floor and carry on. The primary gripe I have with supply piping is that you cannot snap to an existing supply pipe connection. Even if it is open-ended, leading to nothing, you cannot continue it later. You must run the supply pipe from one extractor or supply depot all the way to another in one go without switching to anything else. It's not a huge limitation really, it's just annoying more than anything and requires you to build scaffolding when working with pylons. as going in and out of the build camera will break the connection, so it all has to be done in the build camera or normal view. It is also very much worth noting that placing supply depots or extractors too close to each other can cause the inventories to bug out and either prioritise one, which takes over the other system, or just disconnect it, causing it to not function properly. To ensure this doesn't happen, be sure to space any depots or extractors from separate networks 5 to 10 U from each other or more. Now we have all of the hotspots marked and the base extended to them, the next step is to build some extractors. For the gases, a farm that creates 64 stasis devices per harvest will need 32,000 of each of the 3 gases: nitrogen, radon and sulfurine. Depending on the class of the hotspot depends on how many extractors you will need. For C class this is 8, B class needs 6 and both A and S class need 4. These numbers are based on the maximum output of the hotspot, and so with the extractors placed in the exact centre built on top of each other. So once everything is up and powered you will need to check this. The hourly output of all extractors for the 3 gases needs to be 2000 or above to produce a required 32,000 every 16 hours. Because the extractors have their storage of 250, the class that defines how many of them to build also defines how many supply depots you need. So here's a graphic for that too, though as you can see it is just 30 if the hotspot is C class and 31 if B to S. As always with this stuff you can find all the graphics and more with the written guide for easier reference at a later date, rather than just skipping to this point and pausing. For the biominerals such as paraffinium, phosphorus and darkside you will need 3200 for the 64 stasis devices, so no matter what the class of the hotspot you only need 1 extractor and 3 supply depots, as it only needs to make 200 per hour. Cobalt and oxygen are different, as while the amount you need to craft 64 stasis devices is static at 19,200 condensed carbon and 9,600 ionized cobalt, how you refine them will dictate how much you want, so we'll go over a dedicated solution in the next section. For each of these resource networks you will want a single supply depot located at the main base. This will be used to gather the resources when harvesting, so be sure to account for that when placing the rest. My bases are designed to have a central platform where all harvesting is done. For 2 of the gas bases this is merely interacting and taking the contents of 2 supply depots then moving on. The rest of your required supply depots can either also be at the primary platform back at the hotspot or even used in creative ways as part of the pylons. A nice bonus of using the supply depots in the pylons, as I have done here, is that connecting them all is super easy, as no scaffolding is required to manually place anything. You can just point at them for a snap point and connect them over the 200 or less unit distance without moving. These pylons can also be used for electricity, as extractors will, of course, need to be wired up. I'm quite into my pylon design, so expect a video for them soon. When it comes to obtaining your ionized cobalt and condensed carbon, there are a few ways you could do it. Firstly is where you are getting your carbon. The best is from carbon planters, but unfortunately these were only available pre-next, so any save made in the past 17 months will not have access to this. So if you don't have access, it is worth asking around for those who do. I have the blueprint on my day 1 save in normal mode and have built a number of these for people. Carbon planters provide on average 85 carbon per planter. This is from a small test I did on my freighter where I recorded the harvest from 118 planters. The minimum harvest was 57 and the max 113, with a very stable average of 85. Another way of getting your carbon would be to bring a primary with you, though that is inconvenient for leisurely harvesting. So it might be best if there is no access to carbon planters at all to just make more oxygen and add a step of converting the oxygen to carbon and then go from there. For this 64 stasis device farm we need 19,200 condensed carbon and 9,600 ionized cobalt. Assuming you have the carbon and cobalt, then there are 2 options. You can either do a single longer refining, which gives you the option to leave it running as you harvest the rest. though this option is only really suited to normal mode and may result in disappearing resources or a shorter two-step refining that also requires less starting resources. For the first method you will want 8 total refiners. Remember that this only really works for normal mode. 5 of the refiners are for condensed carbon and 3 for ionized cobalt. You'll need to produce 7,680 carbon, 11,520 oxygen and 3,840 cobalt. You will need to put 1,536 carbon in 5 of them and 1,280 cobalt in the other 3, then the same again for oxygen in the respective refiners. This will provide the required condensed carbon and ionized cobalt. You can make this a lot easier by pre-splitting the oxygen and cobalt into separate lines for each refiner. This requires separate supply depots and extractors. On my test farm I have 12 separate oxygen runs, each supplying 1,250 oxygen, which leaves quite a bit left over, but extra is fine, not enough is not. This is also set up for 2-pass refining. For 2-pass, which I expect will be the standard, you'll want 12 refiners on normal and 8 on survival or permadeath. Don't worry about refiner placement limits, I'll show you how to get around them in the glitching section, but also the difference between the modes is based on the input and output capacity of the refiners. In normal mode a refiner can hold 9,999 in each of the inputs, but can only hold 4,095 in the output, which is an odd thing. No idea why it hasn't been adjusted yet. Whereas in survival and permadeath only 250 can be held in both the inputs and the outputs, making it a little more hands-on but still very quick. With 250, 8 refiners are more than you can keep up with. In normal mode you would have 8 refiners for carbon and 4 for cobalt. For each refiner they will need 160 carbon or cobalt and then 960 oxygen. You let the first run go, which refines 2 carbon and 2 oxygen into 5 condensed carbon. Once it has finished, you put the newly made condensed carbon into an input slot to then refine 1 condensed carbon and 2 oxygen to 6 condensed carbon, and do the same with the cobalt. Each of the 12 refiners will finish with 2,400 of its respective higher class resource. While I advise you separate the oxygen for each refiner, I would recommend that you split the stacks for the cobalt and carbon. To begin with, as it is quite quick, simply place the primary stack into the input, then click to pick up and split it to leave 160 in the input and put the rest in your inventory. That way it takes a second or 2 per one. If you are on PC you can easily set macros and split the stacks for you, as well as use the scroll wheel on the mouse to very speedily split stacks. On survival and permadeath it is a little more involved due to limitations on stack sizes, though splitting isn't as required. For this you will just need 5 refiners marked for carbon and 3 for cobalt. You will just need 500 carbon, 300 cobalt and 12,500 oxygen. In your first 5 refiners put 100 carbon and 250 oxygen. In the other 3, 90, 90 and 70 cobalt. You could just do 100, 150 if that's easier. The whole process will take the same time roughly regardless, and also oxygen with the cobalt too. This first run is to make the primary condensed and ionized. Once this has been made, you'll move the condensed and ionized over to an input with the oxygen to make a more efficient recipe for resources, and just keep topping up the inputs for oxygen from your inventory and the condensed and ionized from the output. You should end up with around 20,000 condensed carbon and 11,250 ionized cobalt. This is more than you need, but as before it's better to have more than not enough. This will take quite a few passes, 19 in total, but each pass is a speed that you can interact and move something for 8 refiners, so it isn't as bad as it sounds. This refining step is almost half of the entire harvest time, and on my normal test farm it takes about 6 to 7 minutes total, with me waiting for almost 2 of that. Electricity in No Man's Sky is very simple at its base. You have 4 things: power generators, power conductors, power receivers and power manipulators. The power generators are biofuel reactor, which burns fuel to create power, solar power, which converts solar energy into usable power, but only during the day, electromagnetic generator, which harnesses the electromagnetic energy of hotspots to provide power, and I'm also including batteries in this category. These, as you would expect, store energy. They work by receiving any extra energy that the network isn't using up and storing that. They have no limit on intake or output per second and will fill or drain automatically in reaction to changes in the demand and production of the network. Next are power conductors, which is just wires. I'm including other cables into this, but the only wire type that just transfers power is electrical wiring. To receive or impart power, an item must be connected to the grid in some way. This is usually done via wiring, though some things conduct power without wires like the Galactic Trade Terminal, ring light and several others. Some things can take wires and conduct wirelessly like lights and teleporters. Wires are a physical object that can have things placed onto them, though they also can be clipped within other items. This is very useful for hiding your wiring. When I build a base, I take into consideration where lights and other required connections are going to be and remove flooring and walls to hide wiring once they've been replaced. With some care, you can also target joints between different parts and often have the connection you are placing slide between them for hidden connections without the need to remove walls and more. A top tip here is that when you are dealing with a lot of connections in a small space, instead of using the wire in the primary build menu, use the quick menu where you would delete in colour. The wiring in this quick menu only will have snapping points disappear as you get very close, allowing you to place connections very close to each other without hassle. This is great for tight turns and overall wire management. Power receivers are everything that requires power to either function at all or function at 100%. These are anything from lights to circular rooms and galactic trade terminals, teleporters, doors, etc. As I said before, some receivers can also conduct. Primarily, these are the circular and cuboid style rooms. They are designed that you power the room itself, which will then require no wiring inside, so they will conduct power to anything within them that needs it and so attach it to the grid. This can be utilised in glitching to have certain conduction only items work outside of glitching to the outside. A prime example of this is the ATM style galactic trade terminal I've shown before, where you glitch a trade terminal into position floating, then glitch a cuboid room to face with that terminal. Powering the cuboid room will then conduct to the galactic trade terminal, allowing you to have one outside. Though there is a more advanced and refined version found by Dark Lord Zelric, which I will explain in the glitching section. Lights are amazing for receiving and conducting. You can line up a huge number of lights, then provided they are close enough to each other, power a single one which will conductively power the whole line. This can be used to great effect to creatively power other items via proximity. Lastly are the power manipulators. These are the logic switches, though you can also use a byte beat as a power manipulator, thanks to it having the ability to time power for lights and such to the beat. There are 6 in total. The wall switch allows you to manually toggle the current passing through it. The push button allows you to let the current through for a short pulse. The proximity sensor will allow power to pass through if a player is within 10U of it. This includes the player camera when in build camera mode, or if in regular camera mode on multiplayer, so the world isn't paused. The floor switch will allow power to pass through if something is adding pressure to it. This includes a player walking onto it, fauna, NPCs and even things like a ball produced via the sphere generator. The power inverter has 2 connections for input and output, and then a third modifier connection. The power will pass through these 2 connections naturally, but if the modifier connection is powered, it will prevent power from passing through. Lastly is the auto switch. This is just the opposite of the inverter. Power will not naturally pass through the 2 pass-through connections, but will allow pass-through if the modified connection is powered. One thing of note is that all wiring, this includes electrical wiring, teleporter cable, supply pipe, they all have a 200U maximum distance. For teleporter cable, this is a real issue as you can only attach a teleporter cable from one short range teleporter to another. You cannot kink the cable. It has to be direct. This puts a maximum short range teleport connection to a 200U unfortunately. Wiring and supply pipes can be kinked by just connecting them to the ground or another surface. For the pipe, this has to be flat. But wiring can be connected to almost any surface and then extend a further 200U. There are many ways to use glitch building in No Man's Sky. to both create otherwise impossible things as well as increase efficiency. In this section we will only be covering adjacency glitching, as without a macro, wire glitching is hellish, though a macro for the wire glitch will also be provided in the macro section. Adjacency glitching is a technique where you use the positioning of one item to place another item that will often not otherwise be possible to place in that circumstance. Anything in the build menus can be adjacency glitched, the limitation is that it can only be glitched from what is next to it. To adjacency glitch, first you position the item you are glitching from. This item must be in a green, ready to build state. We refer to this as green lighting. You also require both the materials to build what you are glitching from as well as what you are glitching to. Once you have the green lit part positioned, press both to move left or right to the item you wish to glitch in within the menu as well as the button to build. These two buttons need to be pressed at the same time, and I mean the same time, though it appears that having the direction key be pressed first is important. On my macro for this glitch I have both buttons pressed within the same millisecond, but it only works consistently with the direction button first in the order. Doing this will build the next item with the same positional information as the first. Each item has an anchor point. This is almost always centered on the horizontal and bottom on the vertical, so a wall or frontage will have its anchor bottom center, as will a flooring. So glitching from a frontage to a floor will place the floor centered on the horizontal but at the lowest point of the frontage, allowing you to perfectly glitch in a floor among other things with only the need to be able to fit a frontage in a thin line in the center. I won't go into it in detail, but just so you have a basic idea, the wire glitch essentially allows you to place any buildable item in the position and orientation of a wire placement point. It should be noted that this will often leave a gap on the surface, as wires usually stand off from the surface of other things. Obtaining any number of one type of refinery in your base is very easy. It should be noted that the limitation recently put on refiners per area has likely been implemented to better control the inventories of those refiners. Items disappearing from the refiner inventories has been a big problem for the longest time. The placement of refiners when they were first introduced caused many bugs, including shared inventories, which caused duping exploits among other things. So it is recommended that you still space them out at least a bit to hopefully lessen the chances of items disappearing, though that risk is always there. Generally you are very unlikely to lose items if you are near the refiners in a stable base that has no pop-in, and a not insane amount of them. 12 seems to be very stable for me. So to avoid this limitation, you just need to adjacency glitch. The limitation is on refiner type, so you can always glitch from a large to a medium if you don't have more than one large already built in that area, or vice versa. You can also glitch from a wall unit to a medium, though note that this will have the medium refiner's orientation be twisted. Also I would advise not glitching them onto walls or ceilings, as this can make it impossible to reach the output, which if you refine something it will never be removed and so the refiner cannot be deleted. For large refiners you can glitch from the appearance modifier, though you will just have to rotate it 180 degrees if you want the refiner to face you. If you wish to have lots of both types I would recommend setting up medium first, then large for the neatest setup. Galactic trade terminals can be a tad annoying due to having no way to power them with a wire. They are natively powered via conduction, which without glitching means they must be snapped to a wall within either a circular or cuboid type room, and that room then be powered. But there are three effective ways to conductively power trade terminals outside. First is a sort of outdoor ATM style which I fully cover in this video here. The basics are that you use a wire horizontally across where you wish to glitch the terminal into, then adjacency glitch from a salvage storage module to the trade terminal on top of that wire. You delete the wire hoping it doesn't take the terminal with it, which sometimes it will. Then you can glitch other things like a frontage into the terminal, from a floor to provide a backing and position a cuboid room behind the terminal that you can glitch from a cuboid window to cuboid room twice to phase it into the terminal. Powering the room that is phased with the terminal will conductively power it. Dark Lord Zelric did lots of testing around this and found a superior way to conductively power the terminal. This is through a hydroponics tray. You glitch the tray terminal in and then position a wall plant, which is to the left of the single hydroponics tray, in the build menu on the back of the tray terminal, and adjacency glitch to the tray. If you position this correctly, powering the tray will conductively power the tray terminal. Correct positioning is on the back, but closer to the sides as the tray terminal has a spherical boundary that is invisible. You can see this if you place a light or wall plant on it, and it is possible to have this positioned nicely while still having the tray's connection and general appearance hidden behind a wall or under a floor that you have the terminal glitched into. I have favoured placing the terminals on the floor. I did this glitching from the wall unit to the terminal on the edge of the flooring. You'll need to rotate the wall unit 180 degrees for the terminal to glitch in facing up, then glitch the tray upside down beneath it for power. The third way is something I just discovered now while writing this section. We had tried lights in the past to no avail, but I had thought, and it works. This third method uses a light to add a wire connection inside the terminal. For this you must place a light exactly where the terminal will go. The positioning of this may take a few tries, but it will be beautifully clean afterwards. Lights have odd clipping, in a good way. You can put them in very small places and then don't affect a lot. You can even hide them between pipe connections for a cool ambient glow. So for this method you place your light first, then glitch in your terminal, then just power the light and job done. You have a working galactic trade terminal with a tiny footprint that is easy to fit into any build. Synthesis added an incredibly useful and fantastically time-saving method of harvesting crops. This is a computer terminal at the top centre of a biodome that upon interacting will fully harvest the dome. Dark Lord Zelric got right into this and started testing after he noticed the biodome he had previously built and glitched in 140 or so gamma weed, harvested all the plants he had glitched in. He tested further with hydroponics trays, which also had their contents harvested upon interaction with the computer. With Dark Lord's findings as a base, I did some testing of my own, and it would seem that the biodome's harvesting works on area, not connection or phasing, which makes sense, and that this area is a cylinder and not a dome. The area is as wide and deep as the dome and as high. So I came up with this method which is very aesthetically appealing and allows for 32 crops to be harvested per dome, which isn't as high as you can get glitching in trays, but it's certainly high enough and it halves your harvest time. First you position a circular room to where the dome that you will harvest will be. On top of that circular room place a biodome. You must now fill the biodome with what will be harvested, as you will not be able to plant crops in there after the next step. Also note that this biodome will not need to be accessed, so no need for doors or anything of the like. Next, green light a circular room snapping beneath the dome and adjacency glitch to a biodome. This will phase the lower dome into the upper dome, bringing the upper dome's crop locations into the harvest area of the lower dome, meaning if you harvest the lower one, it will harvest both. Also note that if you fill all crop points with crops, then place your door in afterwards, the crops won't disappear, allowing you to have a full 16 per dome. One big thing to note in this glitch is that if you mess up the adjacency glitch from circular room to biodome and place that circular, when you delete the circular, it will also delete the crops in the dome it is snapped to. You won't lose your items though, and will just need to replant it. Another trick for shorter walking distances is general dome placement. If you snap a line of corridors where you want your domes to be, then delete 3 of them, snap a dome in, delete the next 3, snap a dome in, you can have your line of domes without corridors, so less to run through. By placing a door in both biodomes at the connection, it will make an opening acting as a tiny corridor, though this can cause a few odd clipping issues, making walking through it not 100% smooth. One last thing to note is when you upload your farm and come back, you can often place crops again in plots that already have crops. I have done this a single time on my test farm and it appears to harvest fully, meaning that both crops in that singular location are growing and being harvested. I have not fully tested the limits of this, but it would appear you can have many crops in a single location, which would mean that you can harvest one hell of a lot more than 32 at a time and still have it looking pleasant. Now we have come to the crops. For each stasis device you'll need a circuit board and a living glass. These two crafted items are entirely made from crops. The circuit board is made with 100 frost crystal, 200 selenium, 100 cactus flesh and 200 star bulb. A living glass is made with 50 vesium, 400 gamma root and 200 frost crystal. The amount of each resource you get from each crop differs on your setup. We'll be focusing on the maximum harvestable amount for this, and I'll explain how you can achieve that maximum for every crop harvesting shortly. With the maximum harvestable amount in mind, each circuit board requires 1.1 frostwort plants, 2.3 solar vine, 0.6 echinocactus and 4.5 star bramble, with living glass needing 1.1 gut rot flower, 4.6 gamma weed and 2.3 frostwort. For this 64 stasis device farm we are building here, that translates to 35 domes filled with 74 frostwort, 148 solar vine, 37 echinocactus and 291 star bramble. The 35th dome only has 5 plants in it. That's for the circuit boards. For the living glass it is a further 32 domes with 73 gut rot flower, 295 gamma weed and 148 frostwort. Technically it is 33 domes, but the 33rd would only have a single plant in it, so I would recommend either a hydroponics tray, which you have on your route, or glitched into a dome, or you just do what I did and whacked in a previously filled plot. For normal difficulty, the order you plant these in doesn't matter at all, as they take up less space in resource form than crafted, but for survival and permadeath this is not the case for all but glass, so the order in which you plant them is a big deal for inventory management. I'm sorting a tool that will display the most efficient possible harvesting order for these crops to be able to craft as you go for those with more limited inventory space. If at the time you are watching this the tool is available, you'll find it in the written guide on my website. If it isn't yet complete, in its place you'll find a full list for both circuit boards and living glass with the 100% most efficient harvest order for up to 200 of each that you can reference. You should note that the order is per dome, as we will be harvesting full domes at a time. Here is a list of the required building materials for all domes, doors and crops. This is assuming one door per dome and doubled up domes, so consider that, as with many other things, a tool for working out building and crafting materials is in the works. Something that will be extremely helpful to have is a 48 slot ship that you keep nice and empty specifically for harvesting runs. These ships are either expensive to buy at around 126 million for a 48 slot hauler, or if you are upgrading can go as high as 3.5 billion. So for those that do not have the required starting capital to add to their fleet, I've put a big list of 48 slot crashed ships listed with their galaxy, portal address and then lat and long location information up on the website. At least one from as many galaxies as I could find, linked below. Just head up to one, claim it as your own and fix it up. Be sure to turn off multiplayer in your settings before entering the system, as being in the same instance as other players will only give one person the chance to get the crashed ship. Fixing a crashed ship up can be done extremely cheaply, by refining the majority of what you need and buying the cheap stuff. I'd recommend checking out the refiner recipes table on the website, which shows all refining recipes, as well as a search function to narrow down to what you're looking for. Another thing I would highly recommend for survival and permadeath players that would also very much benefit all players is the Matter Beam tech module for freighters. This piece of tech allows you to not only send and receive items within your freighter inventory, but also use items inside it for crafting. To obtain the Matter Beam blueprint, you must visit the console on the bridge of your freighter, where it will cost you 5 frigate salvage modules. These can be gained most easily from other freighter cargo pods in the system. Just be warned that attacking these freighters will lower the reputation you have with the race that runs the system, but it's nothing particularly bad, you can easily bring it back up again. Your multitool holds the key to fruitful harvests. This is because the optical drill mining tech module for your multitool also affects plant harvesting. I did an awful lot of testing asking for harvest quantities from many people until a friendly viewer commented on a stream where I'd mentioned my annoyance. So big thank you to Cozy03 for setting me in the right direction. At base, the crops will harvest at a multiple of 25. so 25 for Fecium and Star Bulb, 50 for Selenium, Gamma Root and Frost Crystal, and 100 for Echino Cactus. Note I've only included those relevant to this guide. With the optical drill correctly optimised, this can go as high as multiples of 44, though it is more like 43.5 or so. 44 for Fecium, Star Bulb, 87 for Selenium, Gamma Root and Frost Crystal, and 174 for Echino Cactus. This is a 74% increase in harvest quantities, which is frankly insane. You can achieve this by having your optical drill with all 4 of its sides touched by any of the 5 mining tech modules. This includes the base mining tech, advanced mining laser, and the 3 upgrades you can have. This bonus to its standard 50% is produced by adjacency bonuses. These other modules touching it impart a bonus by simply touching it and being the same type. The bonus is the same regardless of which of the mining tech it is. To not mess up your standard multitool setup, I would advise using one of your 3 multitool slots specifically for harvesting and base resource farming. Of course, for multitools there is another big old list you may be interested in, with their galaxy, portal address and the miner settlement location in Latin long that you'll find the S-Class version up on the website, all linked below. As with the crashed ships, I would highly advise that you turn off multiplayer before entering the system to ensure you will be able to obtain the multitool. Being in an instance with other players only gives one player the chance to get the multitool or crashed ship, and this can chain indefinitely if there is always one person in the system with MP turned on. Also, if an entry says to reload at the space station, this shouldn't usually be a requirement for it to appear, as that is the default option. But if it doesn't appear, reloading at the space station will often fix it and cause it to spawn correctly. Now for the harvest. This particular farm setup is optimised in several ways, including its order. I've done many runs at this point and refined it a fair bit. My suggested route is to start at the refiner base with the oxygen and cobalt and do those first. Put your oxygen and split your cobalt or carbon stacks to 160 for each refiner. By the time you have gone around all of them, it'll be time to put the newly refined ionised cobalt or condensed carbon into the input with the oxygen to continue the second pass. For survival and permadeath, this will be a much more hands-on process of just turning in a circle, collecting and filling the input until you are done. For normal, you will likely have 1 to 2 minutes of waiting while the second pass finishes. At this point, grab any gas and biomaterials at the base. Should be 32,000 plus for gas and 3,200 plus for biomineral. At this point, if on survival or permadeath, you should start crafting the alloys and gas crafted items. Then move to the next gas and biomineral, collect and craft if you need to for space, and onto the third and do the same. Once you have all 3 gas and biomineral bases harvested, you can craft almost everything, right up to cryopump, superconductor and iridesite. The only thing left is to harvest the crops, craft the circuit boards and living glass, then complete the cryogenic chambers and quantum processor to put all together for stasis devices. Normal mode players can essentially collect everything in one go and craft all at the end, but even then be aware of your space. You may need to craft 32 of one thing and its counterpart, then the other 32 after. Things like thermic condensate, nitrogen salt and enriched carbon require 128 of each for this full run, so doing all at once can be risky. Survival and permadeath players, be sure to use your freighter storage to hand off items for more general bag space at the time. If you require it, building storage containers at the final crop base could help with freeing up space to craft. My first run came to around 24 minutes. I later created macros for crafting which essentially just spam the D key as fast as the game will allow, which increases the items being crafted by 1. This and a little more refined refining section while still waiting for 2 minutes took my harvest time down to 16.5 minutes. I'm fairly sure with a little more refining this could be brought down to less than 15 minutes, which would allow for hitting the unit cap in an hour over multiple farms. Macros are an incredibly useful thing. When it comes to what macros we will be using, they are very simple scripts that perform actions either to specific timing for better consistency than a human can manage, or making tasks that require multiple keystrokes only need 1 or 2. I've written and tested with 9 separate ones here, all very simple, all very useful. Sadly, if it is possible to use macros on a console in this manner, it is far beyond me, so this will be focusing on PC only for this section. There are also 2 types of programs we will be using. The first is a brand specific macro program that would come with your mouse or keyboard, such as Razer Synapse. The second is a universal program called Auto Hotkeys. Auto Hotkeys can be used by pretty much anyone with a PC, so if you don't have a fancy keyboard or mouse, I have you covered. The first can be done with no issue on a brand design macro program. The Auto Hotkeys way works the same, just requiring you to write the script, but I've written the scripts for all of these and have made them available for download from my website, which is linked in the pinned comment. I'll also be adding downloads for Razer Synapse and hopefully Corsair, Logitech and any others that I can get my hands on from very trusted sources that should be able to import into yours. The first is left and right adjacency glitching. This is a 5-step macro, so in your software you need to record the direction key down. This is left or right arrow depending which you are doing. Left mouse button down followed by a 17 millisecond delay, then left mouse button up and directional key up. That is your adjacency glitch macro. Wire glitching is a little different. To wire glitch you must have the quick menu within the build menu that allows for placing wires, deleting and colouring objects set to wire. Then you position the item you wish to build anywhere that it green lights. This is a stage where the macro takes over. To do it manually you enter the quick menu again and hold it, then position the wire to where you want the item to go, and then simultaneously release control and click the left mouse button and it will build it, but the timing of this is insane. The macro has 7 parts. The first is control down, then a 6 second or 6000 millisecond delay. This is so that you can position the wire with ample time. After the delay, it is control up, then a 9 millisecond delay, left mouse button down, 17 millisecond delay, and then left mouse button up. In the Synapse software, both the adjacency and wire glitch macros work almost perfectly, near 100% consistent building. Auto Hotkeys, however, is a tad janky. I'm not sure why, but it is not so consistent and will fail often. But even with that failure rate, the wire glitch especially is still far more convenient with Auto Hotkeys than manually. If you are very adept at the adjacency glitching and do it perfect nearly every time, then you'll likely want to continue manual over Auto Hotkeys. There are still many other beneficial scripts that make it worth using. The next 2 are scroll wheel boosters. This essentially increases the speed you scroll your mouse wheel to the maximum that the game will allow. As far as I know, the brand and macro software for some reason doesn't track the mouse wheel when recording, so isn't one I can easily guide you through the building. But I have added it to the Auto Hotkey script. Then the final 4 are ones which can be done in brand macro software, but I would for most people recommend using via Auto Hotkeys, as the activation is far more seamless. These are repeater scripts for your W, A, S and D keys and work far more seamlessly than if bound to a single macro key. If you are using a brand macro program, you are likely assigning these macros to run upon pressing a specific dedicated macro key. You can usually have this macro only assigned to the key or just only work within specific programs. The Auto Hotkey scripts I have set to only work within No Man's Sky. The main difference is that while you can assign Auto Hotkey scripts to a specific button, you can also use button combinations, which is what I've done here. By default, the adjacency glitch left is left shift, right shift and G, with the right adjacency being left shift, right shift and H. I originally just had these as left shift G and left shift H, but I realised pretty quickly that this would be very damaging when naming planets or systems, as capitalising a G or H would initiate the macro and cause the name to upload. Wire glitch is by default initiated by left shift, right shift and J. The rest is a lot more streamlined and essentially turns the left shift key into a sort of speed booster. Holding down the left shift key will allow for the scroll wheel up and down speed boost to happen. If the left shift key isn't held down as you scroll, you'll scroll at the normal pace of your mouse. This is also how W, A, S and D repeaters are initiated, though there is a safety feature. Essentially for these, you press and hold left shift and then press and hold either of the W, A, S and D keys. Once a macro has been initiated, you don't need to continue holding shift, just the letter key. This macro will first fire once with the capitalization of the key. This is in case you did this combination for that purpose. It will then wait 500 milliseconds, which is half a second, and then start firing the key at a rate of 35 per second. This is to mimic the speed up event that happens when you increase the amount of something you are buying, except it applies it to the keys in all situations, like when splitting a stack or increasing the number of items you wish to craft. Just the D key speed up will turn a 10-minute crafting session into less than 2 minutes, so for anyone farming, this is a huge time saver. You can set an auto crafting macro to a specific amount easily using any of the software, but it's a great use with the brand macro software. Just have the D key down, then delay of 17 milliseconds, D key up and then another delay. Set the macro to repeat 63 times in the case of this farm we are building, or if you wish, have it repeat while the button is being pressed. The auto hotkeys macro and any brand software macros I could get my hands on can be downloaded from the macro downloader app page on xainesworld.com. It is a simple application I wrote which will compile a custom script file for use with auto hotkeys that only has the specific macros you want in it and then serves it up for you to download. I will be releasing a standalone video on macros using this section and a great explanation of how to script in auto hotkeys. With the release of that video, I am planning to add the ability to choose your key combos for firing these macros as you download it from the app. The last section of this enormous guide is a UAS Golden Royal Mint initiative. This is 2 systems in the UAS dedicated to stasis device farming. The idea is to have many stasis device farms all in one place, all optimised to allow you to farm one after another and hit your unit cap in around an hour. With ship slot upgrades costing a huge amount of units in the higher end, this farming initiative is finally worth doing. We already have multiple farms built on PC and PS4 and invite any farming enthusiasts to come and build one of your own so that we may concentrate this ability to create wealth and benefit the most amount of people possible. All farms in the Stasis Device farming system will be featured on the Xaine's World website, so people know what to expect and impart any extra information that may be required for the most efficient farming of those bases, due to every Stasis Device farm being a setup consisting of an absolute minimum of 3 bases. You may be curious why there are 2 systems for this. This is due to the way uploading bases works for No Man's Sky, and that is that the limit is 1 per planet per account. So while you cannot see your normal base in survival or permadeath, uploading a base on a planet that already has a base uploaded in a different difficulty will override it. So 2 systems are for both spreading out this initiative to lessen the lag that comes with huge amounts of bases in one place and allow those who wish to build a stasis device farming setup on both sets of difficulties. Note that my wording there is due to normal being its own reality for visibility of bases, but survival and permadeath share visibility for bases. We have 2 guidelines in the UAS that we ask all who venture within to play by for the betterment of all, and those are the naming guidelines for systems within the UAS space, and that all bases be built no closer than 4000 U from a portal or other person's base, which is 16 minutes by foot. This is due to the loading radius around a player, which is 2000 U. Mix that in with the ability to extend your base boundary by up to a radius of 1000 U, and having that 4000 U space allows for no base to interfere with other bases' ability to utilise the complexity cap and ensures maximum stability. The exception, of course, is that if all parts involved have agreed to build the base close to each other. For more information, the UAS and the UAS Golden Mint initiative, check out the link in the pinned comment. Thank you all for watching. This guide has been an insane undertaking which took about 2 months of my life to test, research and make. I appreciate all your patience while I worked on this. Considering the huge amount of work involved, it would be great if this video got shared around a lot and seen by those who would benefit from it, so please share to your heart's content. If you are new to Xaine's World and either haven't subbed yet, or even if this is your first video, welcome. Getting to this point of the video is a bit of an achievement in its own right, and maybe consider subbing. There's lots more where this came from. Xaine's World has a merch store with super soft comfy tri-blend tees and polyblend hoodies to snuggle up in. I genuinely love the quality of the stuff and highly recommend checking the store out. It is linked in the pinned comment with everything else next to the Patreon link, and the link to the Discord where 1,000 plus people and I chat about No Man's Sky and other games, as well as tech, art and even D&D. Thanks for watching folks, and have a fantastic day.